Wrestle Machine with the Life of Crusher Blackwell, Roids in World Wrestling Federation, and much more. Lots of viewers are sending their requests. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. February 6, 1995 Observer Newsletter, Crusher Jerry Blackwell dies, Ray Stevens and Harley Race health updates, Clash of the Champions, steroids in WWF and WCW, tons more. Wrestling Observer Newsletter P.O. Box 1228, Campbell, California 950091228 February 6, 1995. Crusher Jerry Blackwell, known as the Mountain from Stone Mountain, Georgia during his 15-year wrestling career, passed away on January 22 from complications from pneumonia at the age of 45. Blackwell, who during his prime was generally considered the best worker of any 400-pound-plus wrestler in history before modern-era wrestlers like Bam Bam Bigelow and Vader came along, had been in poor health for most of the past 8 years, generally stemming from obesity, which prematurely ended his career. He had largely been out of active wrestling since 1988, although he promoted around Atlanta suburbs for an independent group that had local television called Southern Championship Wrestling through 1990. He had been out of the pro wrestling scene the past 4 years, estranged from his family and living in Dawsonville, Georgia, largely suffering from a series of illnesses ranging from gout, diabetes and gangrene, all stemming from his weight, as he had gotten heavier since retiring from pro wrestling. He had largely been bedridden for much of the past year. His condition was worsened by a series of auto accidents, some would say not all coincidental. The latest auto accident, in December, hospitalized him and led to the weakened condition which ended up taking his life. He was buried on January 25 in Atlanta. Blackwell, at about 5'9" January 2 and ranging from 375 to 420 pounds during his career, he was billed in the 80s at 468 pounds, although at the time he was closer to 395, but at a short height with the enormous gut, he could pass for 468. During his prime had surprising agility, stamina and working ability. Unlike other 400-pound monsters such as Vader, Bigelow, King Kong Bundy, Avalanche John Tenta, etc., Blackwell was much shorter and most of his weight was centered around an enormous midsection which hung practically down to his knees, with a much smaller overall frame and smaller legs than others in the 400-pound range. This only made his work that much more impressive, doing moves like standing drop kicks and taking big backdrops and suplexes, which in those days no men of his size were able to do. He had a very unique ability for being able to work even in believable matches with men much lighter, even of the size of Greg Gagne, a frequent opponent, rather than doing the traditional big man/little man spots that 400-pounders in wrestling during that era did. It was this ability that made him a major star internationally. Despite his physique, which from looking at him one would envision the most unathletic, out-of-shape specimen in the business, Blackwell was actually a top 50 caliber worker during his prime. His best career run came from 1979-86 while wrestling for Vern Gagne's American Wrestling Association, first as a heel and later as a babyface. Although his age will be disputed by most in wrestling because the weight and eventual gray hair by the mid-80s made him look far older than he really was, Jerry Blackwell was born April 26, 1949. The Wrestling Observer's Who's Who in Pro Wrestling published in 1986 listed a 1942 birth date, but other sources after the fact claim to have seen his passport visa listing a 1949 date. The fact he not only had several grandchildren, but great-grandchildren, also makes the 1949 date subject to question. Local newspaper death notices listed his age at 45, which would be the same age as our updated records had, and given the time period of his career, that age would also seem to be the most likely, as, despite the fact that he could pass for being in his early 40s in 1984 by the way he looked, it's relatively hard to believe a man that fat could have had the agility and stamina he possessed in his early 40s, because fat men generally lose their ring ability faster as they age than men who keep themselves in shape, both because the stamina and agility goes faster but also because all the weight makes the joints go faster. He began wrestling in 1974 in the South doing the Fat Man Hillbilly gimmick. He had an early stint in the WWF as Crusher Blackwell where he didn't get much of a push. He got a sizable push in his second stint in the WWF in the late 70s, including title matches with then-champion Bob Backlund at most of the major Northeastern arenas. He was also something of a major star in the old Knoxville circuit where he worked under a mask as the Canadian Bumblebee after originally coming in as Crusher Blackwell doing the Boo Bradley gimmick of being a good old boy forced to be a heel by manager Boris Malenko, who supposedly held the mortgage on his house and was constantly threatening to foreclose on his family before local hero Ron Garvin took him under his wing. His biggest success, both in terms of notoriety as well as money, was no doubt with the American Wrestling Alliance. He arrived in 1979 as Jerry Blackwell, to feud with the Crusher over the right to use the name. He was along with Nick Bockwinkel, the top heel in the territory during that period, and was even a frequent contender for Vern Gagne's American Wrestling Alliance title after Gagne had regained the title in 1980. He also was a frequent early opponent for Hulk Hogan when Hogan first made his name as a major drawing card in the United States. In fact, by going up for slams for Hogan, he got Hogan over as a powerhouse, which was basically the gimmick Hogan used as a face against monsters for the next 15 years. He also would go up for suplexes regularly when feuding with Brad Rheingans, although Rheingans didn't get over due to lack of charisma despite Blackwell's best efforts. Blackwell was one of the headliners at the time the American Wrestling Alliance was setting gate records, including being in the top main event or semi-final during numerous sellouts of the 17,000-seat St. Paul Civic Center and in other American Wrestling Alliance cities like Chicago. He was in the semi-final of a 1982 St. Paul show, which not only drew a sellout, but a sellout of a 5,000-seat adjacent building for the closed circuit overflow, teaming with former Olympic wrestler Sheik Adnan El-Kassi against Vern Gagne, coming out of retirement for the first of hundreds of times, and Mad Dog Vachon underneath the most famous of the Bockwinkel vs. Hogan title matches. Blackwell was a surprisingly strong interview along with being a top-notch worker. Soon thereafter, Blackwell took a comedy role and stayed with it for a several-year run, turning Arabian to Sheikh Ayatollah Blackwell, a spoof on the Iranian Ayatollah who was considered at the time the greatest foreign menace in real-world politics due to the famous hostage crisis a few years earlier. Blackwell was first a tag team partner with Kassi. The two had a lengthy feud with the High Flyers, Greg Gagne and Jim Brunzell, threatening to take the titles to Baghdad, Iraq, where Blackwell had been promised a harem of dancing girls. That pairing never captured the American Wrestling Alliance tag team titles, although Blackwell was constantly teased of his dream with constant close calls. Blackwell wore a white Arabian outfit complete with chic turban, and with combination of that and his southern accent, interviews with Gene Okerlund, before Okerlund started taking himself too seriously, made him a campy favorite when the American Wrestling Alliance was on fire. After Kassi's career was somewhat curtailed due to frequent ring injuries, he was made a manager and Blackwell was paired with Ken Patera, and the two captured the American Wrestling Alliance tag team titles on March 26, 1983 in Minneapolis from the High Flyers, which they held until May 6, 1984, losing to the Crusher and Baron von Raschke in Green Bay. The pairing with Patera had its own irony. Several years earlier, Patera was responsible for Blackwell gaining some mainstream notoriety as what was actually a practical joke. Patera, who was one of the strongest men in the world in his prime, had been invited to a CBS network annual show that was popular for a few years called the World's Strongest Man Contest, where large wrestlers along with champion Olympic lifters, powerlifters and bodybuilders were brought together for a series of unique feats of strength. Other wrestlers such as Billy Graham and Ivan Putski were invited. Later future pro wrestlers such as Bill Kazmaier and Tom Magee actually won contests. After doing it for 2 years, Patera trimmed down about 60 pounds and thus didn't have the power to compete against the monsters and suggested, as a joke, this 420-pound wrestler. While Blackwell was no doubt a powerful man, he was totally out of his league in that category and didn't do well. However, Vern Gagne, who promoted the American Wrestling Alliance and was a former great in real sports, always looked for real sports connections to give his wrestling credibility and harped on Blackwell being in the Strongest Man in the World contest for the first few years in the Federation. Blackwell, among numerous other regional titles, held the Missouri State title out of St. Louis. At the time it was considered the top regional title in the old NWA. Blackwell had a short reign, beating Kerry Von Erich on April 15, 1983, but losing it 4 weeks later to Harley Race. His second run was as a babyface, beating Race on November 16, 1984 and holding on to it until Race regained it on August 2, 1985. Blackwell also made 4 tours for All Japan Pro Wrestling between 1977 and 1986, generally working as a main eventer and only doing jobs for the top stars like Jumbo Tsuruta. His 2 biggest matches were on October 22, 1979, losing a United National title match to Tsuruta, and a September 3, 1984 match in Hiroshima for the then held-up NWA International Tag Team titles, teaming with Bruiser Brody and losing to Tsuruta and Genichiro Tenryu. Blackwell was actually among the first wrestlers from the American Wrestling Alliance recruited by Vince McMahon. Blackwell was set to debut in early 1984 and was actually in St. Louis for a television taping ready to start. Before the show began, Blackwell got cold feet and left the building, believe it or not, citing loyalty to Vern Gagne, who had made him a lot of money. After losing the tag titles, Blackwell was ambushed by Cassie and turned babyface for the next several years and was a top face in the American Wrestling Alliance. His most remembered face feud was probably with Brody in 1986, the same year his health began failing. In the midst of the feud, which started off strong, Blackwell was hospitalized and nearly died from a combination of kidney failure and pneumonia. Although he did return as a regular to the American Wrestling Alliance and feuded mainly with Brody until Brody walked out of the promotion and also worked with Brody on several independent shows as the two became close friends, his stamina was gone and he couldn't do much anymore in the ring. By 1988 he was pretty much out of wrestling because his condition had deteriorated and into promoting. As of press time, the only acknowledgement within wrestling of Blackwell's passing was by his former business associate Joe Pedicino on Atlanta's WTLK, which did a video tribute over this past weekend. Clash of the Champions. Thumbs up 20 votes, 0.90%. Thumbs down 164 votes, 73.9%. In the middle 38 votes, 17.1%. Best match poll. Johnny B. Bad vs Arnold Anderson 88 votes. Bagwell and Patriot vs Harlem Heat 29 votes. Alex Wright vs Bobby Eaton 19 votes. Hogan and Savage vs Butcher and Sullivan 15 votes. Sting vs Avalanche 10 votes. Worst match poll. Hogan and Savage vs Butcher and Sullivan 71 votes. Sting vs Avalanche 39 votes. Alex Wright vs Bobby Eaton 14 votes. Royal Rumble final poll results. Thumbs up 257 votes, 66.6%. Thumbs down 53 votes, 13.7%. In the middle 76 votes, 19.7%. Best match poll. Bret Hart vs Diesel 186 votes. Kid and Holly vs Bigelow and Tatanka 61 votes. Razor Ramon vs Jeff Jarrett 46 votes. Royal Rumble 43 votes. Worst match poll. Undertaker vs IRS 221 votes. Royal Rumble 33 votes. Kid and Holly vs Bigelow and Tatanka 12 votes. Razor Ramon vs Jeff Jarrett 12 votes. Bret Hart vs Diesel 11 votes. Based on phone calls, faxes and letters to the Observer as of Tuesday morning, January 31st. Statistical margin of error, plus-minus 100%. Catching up on other news involving legendary wrestlers. According to spokespeople at Hennepin County Hospital in Minneapolis, Ray Stevens was released from care this past week. The original reports in last week's issue of him suffering a stroke and going to undergo triple bypass surgery were incorrect, but he was hospitalized for 12 days after suffering a heart attack. The reports we have is that he's out of the hospital and doing fine. Harley Race, 51, was in a serious auto accident this past week, which is why he wasn't at the Clash on Wednesday night. According to the reports we received, Race broke both his hands and suffered a broken hip when his car hit the center divider after the airbag came out, which blocked his vision on January 24 near his home in Kansas City. Because of the idea that you can never tell the truth when something unfortunate happens to a heel, one of those wrestling truisms passed down for generations because people in wrestling have an amazing amount of rationalizations for wanting to never tell the truth to the public. This won't be acknowledged by WCW, which has some interviews with Race in the can that will air in the future on television. This created another television embarrassment because the post-match angle in the Hogan match at the Clash was to involve Race. In pre-taped segments that were taped before the Clash but aired over the past weekend, Gene Okerlund talked of Race's interference during the main event when he wasn't even there. At the live Clash itself, Race's name was brought up several times by the announcers during the show as to why he wasn't with Vader. They said how they had seen him in Las Vegas and kind of teased throughout the show that he might be arriving in a surprise scenario when in actuality he wasn't there because of his injuries. There has been speculation that the hole created by Race's leaving would be filled by Ric Flair coming back first as Vader's manager as a way to get back at Hogan. At press time we have no Royal Rumble buy rate estimates. As for Clash of the Champions, having been there live and then watching the tape, the show was an improvement over Starrcade, but that's no big praise. Arnold Anderson vs Johnny B. Bad was a good match and the next two matches were okay. Sting Avalanche was bad, but it was at least slightly better than their Starrcade and television matches. The main event wasn't awful due to Randy Savage's contributions, but the logic of having Hogan get right up from Vader's powerbomb in the post-match was questioned by nearly everyone. While those who hate Superman characters to begin with would hate the spot no matter what, we do have to acknowledge with the money Hogan costs, maybe he has to be portrayed as Superman. But even Superman sells before the first confrontation. If this had been a spot in the climactic cage match, it wouldn't have been so bad. If Vader, not Hogan, was the champion going into the first pay-per-view match, this would have been an awesome spot. But with Hogan as champion, this, if anything, only served to hurt, not help interest in the pay-per-view match, because even before they had gotten into the ring for their first match, they've already established Vader as just another challenger for Hogan rather than his toughest opponent to date. There were numerous people around the wrestling business who heavily complained about the spot where Butcher put Hogan to sleep, and then instead of the referee acting as is normal for a sleeper to check the arm, he let him lay and the announcers talked about having to do a pin. Savage then dropped the elbow off the top on Hogan, which magically revived him and set the stage for comeback number 1. It was an interesting spot, but it also may hurt down the road when Savage makes the turn, because they've already established Savage's elbow not only can put Hogan out, but in fact it only makes him revive. The talk about Hogan's ego was never more in effect and never more deserved. Instead of Savage being portrayed as an equal, as say Batman to Hogan's Superman, to eventually build up to their matches at the end of the year, it was made clear from the start they were Batman and Robin, and Savage was totally established as number 2 on his debut rather than there being any question of the pecking order, even to the point that it was Hogan who scored the winning pin in Savage's debut show and it was Hogan who got the hot tag and not Savage. The Clash on January 25 at Caesars Palace Sports Pavilion in Las Vegas drew a sellout 3,500 fans, of which 2,300 were paid. With the high ticket prices, $50, $40, $25 and $15, the gate was in excess of $60,000, so from a gate standpoint it was the biggest clash ever. While some would knock the idea of only 2,300 paid for a major show as being nothing to brag about, when it comes at 4:30 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon, the fact the building was filled makes the promotion of the event a success. The local promotion aspect was excellent, as many of the wrestlers, Randy Savage in particular, were doing numerous media and public appearances building to the event. At Caesars itself, there were several large posters around the casino, and it seemed every employee of the hotel had buttons on their shirts listing the show. The most important number is that the show did a 3.5 rating and a 5.6 share. So it was viewed in 2,160,000 homes during an average minute. At press time we don't have the quarter-hour breakdowns, but as an overall show, that was the exact same rating as last January's clash with a Ric Flair and Sting vs Vader and Rick Rude main event. Both shows had relatively weak undercards. While this year's undercard was slightly weaker on paper, both shows drew based almost exclusively on the main event. While the heels were definitely weaker this year, the fact that Mr. General Public drawing card Hogan and the television debut of Savage with WCW were on this show, along with the last-minute hype of Flair's return and a half-page USA Today ad on page 2 of the sports section the day of the show and a lot of other advertising tacked on, has to make this rating a disappointment, even though we were told going in that Eric Bischoff had set his sights on a 3.5. As a live show, it was okay. It was better than the recent WWF and WCW house shows I've seen, although in no ways would it qualify as a good show. The atmosphere in many ways, because it was a television show, wasn't like you were attending a wrestling show. With Gary Cappetta constantly telling the fans to make noise during every commercial break and giving them a countdown to pop, it was more like attending a game show taping than seeing a live show. They passed out a decent amount of merchandise before they went on the air, although the crowd brought far more Hogan merchandise than most WCW crowds. In fact, the building was filled with people wearing WWF merchandise. Before the show, when Cappetta ran down the card, the most boos by far were for Alex Wright. Hogan got both a lot of cheers and a lot of boos. However, when Wright came out for his match with Bobby Eaton, he was neither cheered nor booed. While Hogan got a lot of boos on his intro and every mention of his name, the cheers drowned out most of the boos, unlike other cities where it's a 50-50. You couldn't see the interviews on the video walls or the Wright video, etc., but could hear them, but the sound system really wasn't that great. After the show, Bischoff said it was a cost-saving measure but admitted it may not have been the best idea because the long delays could have taken the crowd out of the show. Truthfully, the delays were shorter than most are at regular house shows, and the one long delay was shorter than an average intermission, and I didn't hear anyone complain afterwards about the delays. All the complaints were directed at Hogan. When Vader came out, he got as many cheers and boos, while Flair was probably 75% cheers, even though he shook Bobby Heenan's hand to try and turn the crowd against him. In the dark match, Brad and Scott Armstrong beat Dick Slater and Bunkhouse Buck in 8:32. Slater went to hit Brad with his cowboy boot, but Brad ducked and Buck got hit and was pinned. 1 star. 1. Arnold Anderson retained the TV title over Johnny B. Bad in 7:38. This was the best of their series of matches thus far. Bad dominated opening with a dropkick and a dive over the top onto Arn and Rob Parker. A really creative spot saw Anderson come off the top, Bad raise his foot but Anderson blocked getting hit and hit an elbow drop. A lot of fans were screaming Haku at Meng. Bad hit the KO punch but knocked Anderson out of the ring. Parker revived Anderson by pouring a pitcher of water on his face. As Bad chased Parker around and into the ring, Anderson caught him with a DDT for the pin. The reaction to Anderson winning was about 90% positive. 3 stars. 2. Wright pinned Eaton in 7:28. The announcers have taken Wright's age back from 19 to 18. Match was okay although nobody cares about Wright. It's too bad, he has potential and he's got the kind of look that women would go for, but by shoving that down people's throat, it works in reverse. Eaton kicked out of Wright's crossbody off the top rope. Then Wright kicked out of Eaton's Alabama Jam before Wright scored a pin with a second crossbody. 2 stars. 3. Harlem Heat retained WCW tag titles beating Marcus Bagwell and the Patriot in 9:45. All 4 worked hard. Lots of USA chants live. Bagwell was worked over most of the way. Match was better than average but the finish was really messed up with Sherry on the apron holding her shoe waiting for the spot that Booker T had called for 15 seconds which just made everyone look stupid. Sherry took an outrageous bump when they finally got to it, as Bagwell reversed T's whip and T got hit with the high heel shoe. Bagwell had T-pinned but Stevie Ray kicked Bagwell in the face, he went over backwards, and T-pinned him. 2 1/4 stars. 4. Sting beat Avalanche via referee stop in a weird finish in 5:22. Avalanche controlled early with the power moves. After a collision, Avalanche went down and Sting fell against the ropes and went down accidentally headbutting Avalanche in the groin. Sting then used 4 stinger splashes before putting on the Scorpion. Avalanche was shaking his head and tapping out like a concession but special ref Guardian Angel didn't call it. Nick Patrick then came out and stopped the match ruling Avalanche had submitted. Angel and Patrick started arguing with Angel saying he was the ref in charge. Angel attacked Patrick and Sting then started punching Angel. Avalanche and Angel started to work on Sting and Angel pulled out his belt but before he could do any real damage, Bagwell and Patriot made the save. The angle was really strange as it appeared it was totally mistimed as Bagwell and Patriot came out for the save before they'd even gotten any heat up. After the match Gene Okerlund in a very clumsy manner said to Angel something to the effect of "You're not going back to Big Bubba Rogers," which in fact he is and he at the end of his interview said he was Big Bubba Rogers going back to the first gimmick that got him over in the mid-80s. Talk about going full circle in life. Match was watchable, but easily the worst thing on the show. 1 1/4 stars. 5. Hogan and Savage beat Kevin Sullivan and Butcher in 11:04. Butcher got the sleeper and Hogan was out. Savage dropped the elbow off the top on Hogan and he popped up and made a comeback. Savage started selling including taking a Jerry Estrada-style bump over the top rope. Finally he made the hot tag. Hogan got the foot in the face on Butcher, Savage dropped the elbow, Hogan did the leg drop in 1 2 3. After the match Vader jumped in and knocked Savage out of the ring. Hogan punched him 3 times but Vader didn't sell. Vader powerbombed Hogan, who got right back up. Savage and Hogan double-teamed Vader and at some point while either doing the powerbomb or taking the bump, Vader ripped his pants. Jimmy Hart threw each a chair and Vader backed off and they posed to end the show. Whatever the purpose was for Flair to be there and the plans of what to do were thwarted for reasons that are unclear although it was supposed to only be a tease at this point. 1 1/2 star. Last week we made some comments about Diesel's comments on the recent Shit Topic television show regarding steroid use in WWF and WCW. While his implication that steroid use was a must in WCW to get a push was probably unfair because it's doubtful use in WCW ever approached the 80 to 90% testified to being in the WWF in the McMahon trial. However, for the present, what he said appears to have validity and WCW has an embarrassment on its hands. Frank Anderson, 38, who is mainly used by WCW on tapes it sends to Europe, was convicted, I believe he pleaded guilty, this past week in Sweden, where he is something of a national hero from his days as a world champion Greco-Roman wrestler in the late 70s and early 80s, of purchasing and possessing genotropin, a form of human growth hormone, the drug many athletes use to get around steroid testing because it is undetectable under the present testing system. Anderson admitted the drugs he purchased in December were for personal use. 2 days later Anderson was in Las Vegas for WCW cutting promos for Europe, so he was neither fined nor suspended despite pleading guilty for using an illegal drug despite that being specific in the WCW drug policy. The fact he never failed a test shows the other loophole and shows that when groups talk about testing as the answer to the question when these drugs are brought up by the media, that is either an incomplete answer or an outright attempt to mislead. However, looking at physiques from WWF and WCW today tells a story. I'm not saying WWF is 100% clean, but it's done a remarkable job of cleaning itself up. That can't be said for WCW. Allegedly, according to court records and Jim Hellwig's dropped lawsuit against Titan, at one point, WWF did fire Ultimate Warrior for the belief he was using growth hormone to get around steroid testing. Hellwig denies this point but does claim that was why he was fired. Hellwig was the group's biggest drawing card at the time he was fired. WCW didn't even suspend Anderson, who hardly qualifies as the group's biggest star but a guy they are using in hopes of getting over in Sweden, when he admitted HGH use and was convicted in court of doing so. The reason the Clash was moved from its original site of Hampton, Virginia to Las Vegas was because the NATPE convention was being held in Vegas from January 24 through January 26. The idea was that WCW would hold a major event, get major TV execs there and show off a hot product with Hogan and Savage. While it didn't appear there were any TV types there with the exception of 2 or 3 faces like Mitch Ackerman from Disney that are there for big shows all the time anyway, WCW did seem to come out strong from a psychological standpoint from NATPE because for the first year in history they stole the spotlight from WWF. Titan flew bigwigs like Vince McMahon, Diesel, Undertaker and Jim Ross in from Florida on the red eye after the Raw taping Monday night, and they were in Vegas on Tuesday afternoon, and Diesel was flown back to work Wednesday night in Florida. According to those who were there, when Diesel was walking around, he did turn heads because he was in costume and his size, but nobody knew who he was. WCW got much larger crowds to the Turner booth with Hogan and Savage, who everyone knew. Bischoff even gave a speech where he talked about WCW as being where the stars are and knocked WWF, saying that their mid-card cast-offs like Diesel are now world champions in WWF. And although I was told it was embarrassing to witness, the interview Lauren Hutton did with Hogan garnered a lot of attention. There were no lines for autographs of Diesel, Undertaker or McMahon, while there were lines for Savage and long lines for Hogan. Some WCW officials were openly talking about smoking Titan at the convention. By Thursday, when foot traffic was down, Ross and Shane McMahon were in the Titan booth with the Bushwhackers, Mr. Fuji, etc. looking like Maytag repairmen, while the crowds flocked around the booth where the Blade Warriors did skating exhibitions just a few feet away. WWF is still far and away #1 in the United States, but they didn't look like it in a venue that they used to be one of the feature attractions in. The only other organization that had a booth at the convention was the Chicago-based American Wrestling Federation, which brought Tito Santana, Sergeant Slaughter, who was recognized by many and got some attention, Chris Adams, Greg Valentine, Johnny Gunn, and Bob Orton. Despite the names in attendance, they billed themselves as the wrestling for the 21st century. It was unintentionally hilarious to see Gunn in costume. Whether or not Gunn is on steroids right now or has been is immaterial to the fact that any TV exec who saw him had to think steroids as their first thought because of his physique. Considering the steroid stigma cost Titan numerous outlets when it came time to renew after the trial, and wrestling is still fighting the stigma with advertisers, trying to sell a wrestler to TV execs by a physique like Gunn's was a many years out-of-date philosophy. AWF will probably be on TV in several markets later this year and was talking about doing house shows in October. Having a booth at the convention and paying for all the wrestlers to appear every day is one very expensive proposition, so they clearly have money behind them. Unfortunately, they didn't appear to have new ideas. Other than selling the show as a 30-minute slot opposed to the traditional 60-minute wrestling slots. There were other companies that were selling old LPWA and world-class tapes, and current ICW tapes, and guys running around from SMW, USWA and even smaller outfits. Interestingly, nobody was trying to sell anything to do with shoot fighting or ultimate fighting despite its success on pay-per-view, and nobody representing international organizations were in attendance. Given what was hot on the convention floor, shows with small costumed guys aimed at children like Power Rangers and their clones, or pretty young athletic types aimed at teenagers at young adults, either the Mexican minis or Japanese women wrestlers probably would have been more of an attention getter. What was there, but only if their exhibits had included live performances. The biggest promotional feud in Japan right now doesn't appear to be among the various different offices but among the country's 2 largest wrestling magazines, Weekly Pro Wrestling and Weekly Gong. Weekly Pro is working on a April 2 Tokyo Dome show. Reportedly, as of the weekend, they had already sold 15,000 tickets priced from $30 to $300 with no matches announced, which is slated to include approximately 11 different promotions. This past week, War pulled out of the Dome show and with help from Gong, is planning on going head-to-head with them that same day at Korakuen Hall, which is next door to the Dome for what they are billing as a fan appreciation night. They are looking to bring in major U.S. independent wrestlers, but the pickings are slim since WWF has WrestleMania, and if WCW or ECW is involved, it no doubt would be for the Dome. Expect a war of words in the mags to heat up over the next few weeks over the competing shows. At present, it has been announced that Rings, U, W, F, I, Pancrase, PWFG, All Japan Women, JWP, LLPW, Michinoku Pro, FMW, New Japan and EVO will be part of the Dome show. It is largely believed that All Japan will be part of the show as well, although that isn't official and in doing so would break All Japan's isolationist policy. It is believed All Japan is willing to do the show if its match is the main event, but New Japan also wants that status. Both WCW and DCW have been contacted about sending wrestlers to the show, but negotiations weren't finalized as of press time. I strongly suspect ECW will be part of the show in either one or two matches. There were ideas of doing a Randy Savage vs Sabu or Terry Funk vs Sabu inter-promotional match, although politics would probably make the former impossible and the latter very difficult. Since each group is supposed to come up with its own match, it's going to be interesting because each group is going to want to have the best match on the show. It's believed that the top All Japan draws like Mitsuharu Misawa and Kenta Kobashi and New Japan draws like Shina Hashimoto and Keiji Muto won't be on the show, but that Atsushi Onita and Akira Maeda would be the big names as drawing cards. Results: January 10, Mexico City Arena Coliseo, EMLL, 600, B. Roth Tito and Damian Cito, El Guerrero B. Orito and Ciclin Cheetah Ramirez, Olympus and Mestizo and Pegaso B. Fiera and Kundra and Huevo Links, Espectra Jr. and Tornado Negro and Cadaver de Ultra Tumba B. Metallico and Justiciero and Americo Rocca, Moger and Archangel de la Muerte and El Hijo del Gladiador B. Pantera 2 and Ringo Mendoza and Blue Demon Jr., Brazo de Oro and Brazo de Plata and La Fiera B. El Brazo and Pierre Roth Jr. and Gran Marcus Jr. January 11, Tlalnepantla, AAA, Delinquente and Dinamo B. Rodan X and Rey Del Mar, Slayer and Caballero del Ring and Sombra del Amor B. El Chacal and Elvis and Capitan Sangre, Super Calo and Winners and Tinieblas Jr. B. Tony Arce and Volcano and Rocco Valente DQ, Los Payasos B. Volador and La Parca and Octagon. January 13, Mexico City Arena Coliseo, EMLL, 900, Lady Apache and Solana B. Rain and Jubuki and La Diabolica DQ, Escudero Rojo and Reyes Veloci and Astra Jr. B. Solar 2 and Olympico and Chicago Express Louisiana Sombra and Ciclone Ramirez and Shocker B. Guerrero Maya and Guerrero del Futuro and Damian El Guerrero, Mascara Magica and Negro Casas and Dandy B. Mocho Coda and Mano Negra and Bestia Salvaje, Emilio Charles Jr. and El Satanico and Dr. Wagner Jr. B. Hector Garza and Atlantis and Silver King. January 13, Netzahual Coyote, UWA, Leopardo Negro B. Goku, Super Crazy and Tutanai B. Arquero I and Ray Gallo, Los Machos 1 and 2 and 3D Principe Maya and Takeda and Paris, Super Raton and Super Pinocho and Aeroflash B. Exotico Adrian and Turaco and Redador, Kanek and Nuevo Audas and Gran Hamada B. Rocky Santana and Mr. Jack and Shuel Guerrero. January 21, Rome, Georgia, North Georgia Wrestling Alliance, Dark Star B. Leopard, Big Bubba B. Mike Golden DQ, Sam McGraw DDQ Bubba, Nasty Critters B. Harley Davidson Crew. January 21, Mooresville, North Carolina, Pro Wrestling Federation, 145 Sellout, Russian Assassin, Ray Hudson, B. Greg Hart, Larry Skipper, Tyron Knox B. Randy Sledge DQ, Texas Outlaw B. Ricky Lane, Flaming Youth 2, Crazy Kane, and Star Rider, Hudson, B. Scott Powers and 2 Hot Thomas DQ, Chris Hamrick and Italian Stallion B. Terry Austin and Austin Steele DQ, Rider 1 Battle Royal. January 22, Luthersville, Georgia, North Georgia Wrestling Alliance, Tim Strong B. Dr. DOA, Lee Thomas B. Mike Golden DQ, Big Bubba B. Ken Arden, Lee Thomas B. Sam McGraw, Nasty Critters B. Jim Bryant and Fred Avery. January 23, Okayama, Heisei Shingun, 1800, prelim results unavailable, Sabu B. Akatoshi Saito, Masachono B. Tatsutoshi Goto, Hiramichi Fuyuki and Geto B. Michiyoshi Ohara and Shiro Koshi Naka. January 23, Fairview, Tennessee, Cumberland Wrestling Council, Keith Hart B. Shogun Warrior No. 1, Stonewall Jackson B. Joe Carr, Rick Roberts B. Mountain Man, Brian Logan B. Soldier of Fortune, Gabe Castell B. John Chitwood, Steve Stack B. Denny Cooley, Hart and Chris Steelheart B. Shogun Warriors. January 24 West Palm Beach, Florida, WWF Superstars taping, 5,000, non-squash results, Lex Luger B. Tatanka, WWF Tag Title, Smoking Gun Head Shrinkers, Davey Boy Smith won Battle Royal, IC Title, Razor Ramon B. Jeff Jarrett DQ, Bret Hart B. Owen Hart, Smith B. Bob Backlund. January 24 Yamagata, All Japan, 4,200 sellout, Manukia Mossman B. Kentaro Shiga, Satoru Asako and Tsuyoshi Kikuchi B. Ryu Kaku Izumida and Masawi Inoue, Tommy Rogers and Bobby Fulton B. Johnny Smith and Tommy Dreamer, Rusher Kimura and Mitsuo Momota B. Haruka Eigen and Masafuchi, Dan Crawford and Doug Furnace B. Mighty Inoue and Yoshinari Ogawa, Giant Baba and Stan Hansen B. Abdullah the Butcher and Giant Kimala II, Steve Williams and Johnny Ace B. Junakiyama and Takao Mori, PWF World and International Tag Titles, Mitsuharu Misawa and Kenta Kobashi D. Toshiaki Kawada and Akira Tao 60 Minutes. January 24 Shimono Seki, Heisei Ishingun, 1000, Yoshiaki Yatsubi Akatoshi Saito, Michiyoshi Ohara B. Isao Takagi, Kunyaki Kobayashi B. Geto and Hiramichi Fuyuki B. Great Kabuki and Akatoshi Saito, Shiro Koshinaka and Tatsutoshi Goto and Kengo Kimura B. Sabu and Masachono and Tasmaniac. January 24 Mexico City Arena Coliseo, EMLL, El Cofre and Supremo 2B Angel de Plata and El Pegaso, Trueno and Ultimatum and Olympus B. Babe Richard and Fierro and America, Escudero Rojo and Reyes Veloci and Rey Bucanero B. Solar 2 and Aguila Solitaria and Olympico, Blue Demon Jr. and Ciclone Ramirez and Brazo de Plata B. El Brazo and Jockmate and El Hijo del Gladiador DQ. Brazo de Oro and La Fiera and Vampiro Canadiense B. Gran Marcus Jr. and Mano Negra and Black Magic. January 25 North Fort Myers, Florida, WWF Challenge in Action Zone tapings, non-squash results, Davey Boy Smith B. Timothy Well, Bob Backlund B. Davey Boy Smith DQ, Hakushi B. Bob Holly, Bret Hart and Smith B. Owen Hart and Backlund, IC Title, Jeff Jarrett B. Atom Bomb, WWF Title, Diesel B. King Kong Bundy. January 25 Tokyo Budokan Hall, rings, 13,526, Tsuyoshi Kosaka B. Wataru Sakata, David Harshivali B. Herman Renting, Bob Schreiber B. Aruzini Lusinov, Soder Gachev B. Masayoshi Naruse, Mitsuya Nagai B. Mark Ashford, Mark Starr, Dick Leon Frey B. Tony Halme, Hans Nyman B. Yoshihisa Yamamoto, Battle Dimension 94 Tournament Final, Fulcon B. Akira Maeda. January 25 Fukushima, All Japan, 3,100 sellout, Ryu Kaku Izumida B. Manukia Mossman, Tommy Rogers and Bobby Fulton B. Kentaro Shiga and Masawi Inoue, Satoru Asako and Tsuyoshi Kikuchi B. Takao Mori and Junakiyama, Mighty Inoue and Haruka Eigen and Masafuchi B. Giant Baba and Rusher Kimura and Mitsuo Momota 2144, Dan Crawford and Doug Furnace B. Johnny Smith and Tommy Dreamer, Steve Williams and Johnny Ace B. Abdullah the Butcher and Giant Kimala II, Stan Hansen B. Akira Tao, Mitsuharu Misawa and Kenta Kobashi B. Toshiaki Kawada and Yoshinari Ogawa. January 25 Hiroshima, Heisei Ishingun, 1650, Yoshiaki Yatsu B. Kunyaki Kobayashi, Akatoshi Saito B. Tasmaniac, Great Kabuki B. Isao Takagi, Shiro Koshinaka B. Geto, Hiramichi Fuyuki B. Michiyoshi Ohara, Sabu and Masachono B. Tatsutoshi Goto and Kengo Kimura. January 25 Funabashi, All Japan Women, prelim results unavailable, Toshio Yamada and Kyoko Inoue and Takako Inoue B. Suzuka Minami and Atsuko Mita and Tomoko Watanabe, Mariko Yoshida B. Mimishimoto, Yumiko Hata and Manami Toyota B. Asia Khan and Kaoru Ito. January 26 Raleigh, North Carolina, WCW, 2000, Alex Wright B. Bobby Eaton, Marcus Bagwell and the Patriot B. Paul Orndorff and Paul Roma, non-title, Johnny B. Bad B. Arnold Anderson, WCW Tag Title, Nasty Boys B. Harlem Heat DQ, U.S. Title, Vader B. Jim Duggan, Sting B. Avalanche DQ. January 26 Nagoya, Pancrase, 3,679 sellout, Yusuke Fuke B. Richard Sarr, Ito B. Gregory Smith, Frank Shamrock B. Katsumi Inagaki, Masakatsu Funaki B. Jason DeLucia, Boss Rudin B. Manabu Yamada, Wayne Shamrock B. Leon Dyke. January 26 Shimozuma, All Japan, 1,500, Masao Inoue B. Manukia Mossman, Mighty Inoue B. Kentaro Shiga, Tommy Dreamer and Johnny Smith B. Satoru Asako and Tsuyoshi Kikuchi, Giant Baba and Rusher Kimura and Mitsuo Momota B. Ryukaku Azumida and Haruka Eigen and Masafuchi 2101, Yoshinari Ogawa B. Bobby Fulton, Abdullah the Butcher and Giant Kimala 2 B. Tommy Rogers and Johnny Ace, Toshiaki Kawada and Akira Tao B. Stan Hansen and Takawa Mori, Mitsuharu Masawa and Kenta Kobashi and Jun Akiyama B. Steve Williams and Dan Crawford and Doug Furness. January 26 Takamatsu, Heisei Ishingun, 1250, Isao Takagi and Yoshiaki Yatsubi Michioshi Ohara and Kengo Kimura, Great Kabuki B. Gedo, Hiramichi Fuyuki B. Akitoshi Saito, Sabubi Kunyaki Kobayashi, Shiro Koshinaka and Tatsutoshi Goto B. Masachono and Tasmaniac. January 26 Suikaido, All Japan Women, 1000, Yoshiko Tamura B. Nobuendo, Kumiko Maekawa and Ritamata B. Tomoko Watanabe and Misae Watanabe, Etsuko Mita and Mima Shimoda B. Chaparita Sari and Kaoru Ito, Minami Toyota B. Mariko Yoshida, Asia Kong and Yumiko Hata and Suzuka Minami B. Takako Inoue and Kyoko Inoue and Toshio Imata. January 26 Mexico City Pista Arena Revolucion, EMLL, Monje Loco and Hombre Loco and Medico Brujo B. Climax and Coralalo and Red Jr., Hombre Bala and Cortado and Destructor de Idolos B. Celestial and Mr. Niebla and Huracan Sevilla, Hector Garza and Humberto Garza Jr. and Ultimo Dragon B. Black Power 2 and Bestia Salvaje and Jock Mate. January 26 Turtle Lake, Wisconsin, Pro Wrestling America, 300 Sellout, Jesse Hennig D. Chosen 1, Chad Carlson, Jerry Lynn B. Dan Jesser DQ, Jim Brunzell B. Randy Gusto, Charlie Norris B. The Condor, Scotty Z. B. Horace the Lunatic, Beverly Brothers, Mike Ennis and Wayne Bloom, B. The Hater and the Punisher. January 26 Austin, Texas, Lone Star Wrestling, Dan Davis B. Adrian Steele, Bullman Downs B. Tarzan Taylor DQ, Tugboat Taylor B. Bubba Monroe, Tim Brooks Action Jackson, Mr. Wrestling 3 B. Rico Suave, Ivan Putski B. Joe Kane, The Gladiator, Rick Larabus, 1 Battle Royal. January 26 Esquimalt, BC, West Coast Championship Wrestling, 120, Marvin the Lunatic B. JT Styles, Power Ranger B. Ola Olsen, Bodyguard B. Johnny Canuck, H&R Puffins Tough B. Serbian Liberation Army Movement, Rocky Della Sera and Michelle Starr, DQ, Olsen 1 Street Fight Battle Royal. January 26 Alcoa, Tennessee, Main Event Wrestling, Ricky Rocket B. Bobby B., Johnny Rayner B. Charlie Long, Billy Marshall B. Lynn Montana DQ, Buddy Landell B. Alaskan Wolfman, Tom Pittner and Knight Rider B. Tim Reed and Mike Powers. January 26 Johnson City, Tennessee, All Pro Wrestling, 200, The Stallion B. Evil Magician, Mr. X and Top Slaughter B. Muller and Troublemaker No. 2, Tiny and Wild Bill DDQ Bad Boy No. 1 and Ricky Z, Eddie Golden and Stanley B. Cherokee Renegade and Chris Steelheart DQ, Mike and Sam Spade B. Ghost Riders, Alex Shane B. Chains DQ, Shane 1 Battle Royal. January 27 Fayetteville, North Carolina, WCW, 1600, Alex Wright B. Bobby Eaton, Marcus Bagwell and the Patriot B. Paul Orndorff and Paul Roma, non-title, Johnny B. Bad B. Arnold Anderson, WCW Tag Title, Nasty Boys B. Harlem Heat DQ, U.S. Title, Vader B. Jim Duggan, Sting B. Avalanche DQ. January 27 Manami Ashikaga, All Japan, 1500, Masao Inoue and Ryukaku Izumida B. Kentaro Shiga and Satoru Asako, Tommy Rogers B. Manuki and Mossman, Rusher Kimura and Mitsuo Momota B. Haruka Eigen and Masafuchi, Abdullah the Butcher and Giant Kimala 2 B. Giant Baba and Mighty Inoue, Jun Akiyama and Takawa Mori B. Johnny Smith and Tommy Dreamer, Stan Hansen and Dan Crawford and Doug Furness B. Steve Williams and Johnny Ace and Bobby Fulton, Toshiaki Kawada and Akira Tao and Yoshinari Ogawa B. Mitsuharu Misawa and Kenta Kobashi and Tsuyoshi Kikuchi 2009. January 27 Nagoya, Heisei Ishingun, 3200, Michioshi Ohara B. Yoshiaki Yatsu, Isao Takagi B. Kengo Kimura, Great Kabuki B. Tasmaniac, Hiramichi Fuyuki and Geto B. Akitoshi Saito and Kunyaki Kobayashi, Shiro Koshinaka and Tatsutoshi Goto B. Sabu and Masachono. January 27 Cookeville, Tennessee, SMW, 263, I Quit Match, Tracy Smothers B. Brian Anderson, Chris Condito B. Boo Bradley, SMW Title, Dirty White Boy B. Buddy Landell DQ, SMW Tag Title, Rock and Roll Express B. Gangstas, Lights Out Match, Gangstas B. Heavenly Bodies, White Boy 1 Rumble Royal. January 27 Mexico City Arena Coliseo, EMLL, Orito and Ciclón Chito Ramirez B. Feli Nieto and Damian Cito El Guerrero, Reina Jubuki and La Diabolica and Maria del Angel B. Lady Apache and Selena and Zauri, Moger and Guerrero de la Muerte and Halcón Negro Jr. B. Pantera 2 and Shocker and Chicago Express, Ultimo Dragon and Negro Casas and Mascara Magica B. Bestia Salvaje and Felino and Archangel de la Muerte DQ, Hector Garza and Atlantis and Oscaris B. El Satanico and Dr. Wagner Jr. and Emilio Charles Jr. DQ. January 27 Deer Park, New York, Universal Superstars of America, Johnny Handsome B. A. Starling, Gino Caruso B. Kodiak Bear South Dakota, Jones B. Salbalomo DQ, Tony Atlas B. Handsome, Warlord B. Bastion Booger, Bodyguard for Hire B. Christopher Michaels. January 27 Calgary, Canadian Rocky Mountain Wrestling, Flip Lee D. Johnny Coltrane, Freeze B. Katana, Super Kungo B. Steve Rivers, Jason Helton B. Black Bar DQ, Steve Gillespie B. Steve Wild, Lumberjack Match, Jerry Morrow B. Rick Titan. January 27 Nanaimo, BC, West Coast Championship Wrestling, 171, JT Styles B. Marvin the Lunatic, Power Ranger B. Ola Olsen, Johnny Canuck B. Bodyguard, Serbian Liberation Army Movement B. H&R Puff and Stuff, Olsen 1 Battle Royal. January 27 Mooresville, North Carolina, Independent Championship Wrestling, 235, Bill Armstrong B. John Strader, Agent Steel B. Johnny Dollars, Executive B. David Daniels, Mike Majors B. L. A. Butcher, Mark Ash and George South B. Gentleman James and Dark Star. January 27 Rossville, Georgia, TWA, Jimmy Sharp and New One-Man Gang B. Chuck Colt and Adrian Champagne, Handicap, Rick Justice and John Humphreys B. Black Terminator DQ, Roger Sartain B. Frankie Lee, Mark Payne and Blazing Fury B. Keith Hart and Fly Guy, Bubba Humphreys B. Ken Arden. January 28 Knoxville, Tennessee, SMW, 2000, D. Low Brown B. Brian Logan 1 1/2 star, Boo Bradley B. Chris Condito 3 1/2 stars, Ricky Morton B. Unabomb DQ 1 star, Buddy Landell B. Tracy Smothers 2 1/2 stars, SMW title, Jerry Lawler B. Dirty White Boy to win title 2 1/4 stars, Lights Out match, White Boy B. Landell 1 1/4 stars, Heavenly Bodies DDQ Gangstas 4 1/4 stars, Morton 1 Rumble Royal 2 stars. January 28 Winston-Salem, North Carolina, WCW, 2200, Alex Wright B. Bobby Eaton Dud, Marcus Bagwell and the Patriot B. Paul Orndorff and Paul Roma 1 1/2 star, non-title, Johnny B. Bad B. Arnold Anderson Dud, WCW Tag Title, Nasty Boys B. Harlem Heat DQ 2 1/4 stars, U.S. Title, Vader B. Jim Duggan 1 3/4 stars, Sting B. Avalanche DQ 1 star. January 28 Tokyo Korakuen Hall, All Japan, 2100 Sellout, Tommy Dreamer B. Manu Ki and Mossman, Tommy Rogers and Bobby Fulton B. Misao Inoue and Yoshinari Ogawa, Dan Crawford and Doug Furnace B. Kentaro Shiga and Satoru Asako, Giant Baba and Rusher Kimura and Mitsuo Momota D. Mighty Inoue and Haruka Eigen and Masafuchi 40 Minutes, Steve Williams and Johnny Ace B. Abdullah the Butcher and Giant Kimala 2, Kenta Kobashi B. Ryukaku Azamida, Mitsuharu Masawa and Tsuyoshi Kikuchi B. Takawa Mori and Junaki Yama, Toshiaki Kawada and Akira Tao B. Stan Hansen and Johnny Smith. January 28 Yokkaichi, IWA, Cynthia Moreno D. Kyoko Ichiki, Aguila Negra B. Taesuk Tao, Miguel Perez B. Hiroshi Ono, Iceman, Ricky Santana, and Jiraiya B. Yoshihiro Tajiri and Takashi Okano, Bunkhouse Match, Leatherface, Rick Patterson, B. Shoji Nakamaki, Crypt Keeper, Jose Estrada Jr., and Cactus Jack B. Dick Slater and Nobutaka Araya. January 28 Kumagaya, Social Pro Wrestling Federation, Fujita B. Exciting Yoshida and Phantom Funakushi B. The Hustler and Deuce, Isamu Taranashi B. Yamada, Goro Tsurumi B. Dangerous Uchida, Yoshiaki Yatsu and Isao Takagi B. Hiroshi Hatanaka and Ryo Maike. January 28 Kyoto, JWP, 1500, prelim results unavailable, Cutie Suzuki B. Fuseo Nauchi, Devil Masami and Mayumi Ozaki B. Hikari Fukuoka and Dynamite Kansai 2332. January 28 Cleveland, Cleveland All-Pro Wrestling, 398, Sean Casey B. Randy Rogers, Biff Beverly B. Canadian Bad Boy, T.C. Reynolds B. Scott D'Amore, J.T. Lightning B. Steve Nixon DQ, Ron Cumberledge Virgil, Johnny Walker B. Brett Powers, Doink the Clown, Matt Osborne, B. Big Bully Bizich, Shane Douglas D. Al Snow 30 minutes 4 stars. January 28 Staten Island, New York, Universal Superstars of America, Christopher Michaels B. Gino Caruso DQ, Tony Atlas 1 Battle Royal South Dakota Jones B. Kodiak Bear, Sal Baloma B. Caruso, Atlas B. Bastion Booger DQ, Bodyguard for Hire B. Johnny Handsome. January 28 Vineland, New Jersey, WWWA, Rick Ratchet B. Ghetto Blaster, Supernova B. Derek Domino DQ, Ace Darling B. Mr. Motion, Blue Demon, obviously not the original, B. Bobby Piper, Harley Lewis B. Inferno Kid, Chief Dancing Wolf 1 Battle Royal, Glenn Osborne B. Dancing Wolf, Jimmy Snuka B. Metal Maniac. January 28 St. Paul, Pro Wrestling America, 200, Lenny Lane B. The Wizard, Scotty Z B. Chosen 1, Jesse Hennig B. Dan Jesser, Jerry Lynn B. Horace the Lunatic, Charlie Norris and Stormtroopers B. The Hater and the Punisher and Randy Gusto. January 28 Cloverdale, BC, West Coast Championship Wrestling, 250, Ole Olson B. Doug Casson, Len Seidel and Brett Coma BH and R Puffin Stuff, Johnny Canuck B. The Bodyguard to win WCCW title, Firefighter Adrian B. Timothy Flowers DQ, Serbian Liberation Army Movement B. Buddy Wayne and Power Ranger. January 28 Montrose, Michigan, Indiana, 300, Benson Lee B. Tex Monroe, Ray Roberts B. Rick Austin, Bob Amendorf B. Tubby Tanaka, Animal Intensity B. Youngbloods, Al Snow B. Johnny V., Not Johnny Valiant, UFC Exhibition, Dan Severn B. Chrome. January 28 Maywood, California, AIWA, Vandal Drum and B. Frankie D., Pulverizer and Mark Kissel DDQ Bubba Storm and Spike Contillo, Man vs. Woman, Cheryl Russo B. Johnny Legend, Peter Maivia Jr., Joe Palumbo Jr., B. Jason the Strong. January 28 Roxborough, North Carolina, Atlantic Championship Wrestling, 207, Red Scorpion B. Tex Granger, Billy Black and Mad Dog Davidson B. Sergeant Rhodes and Hammerman, Dale Porter B. Pat Friday, Gravedigger B. Russian Assassin DQ, East Coast Connection B. Heartbreak Express, Hammerman 1 Battle Royal. January 28 Chatsworth, Georgia, TWA, Samurai Dragons B. Adrian Champagne and Larry Blade, Craig Ward and Superstar No. 2 B. Joey Funk and Outpatient, Jimmy Sharp and Scotty Fernandez B. Craig Ward and John Green, Frankie Lee and Chuck Colton Champagne NC Mark Payne and Blazing Fury and Ken Arden. January 28 Sun Valley, California, Slammers, Jeff Lindbergh 1 Bunkhouse Battle Royal, Movie Star Mike B. Lindbergh DQ, Bruce Bodine B. Hombre de Oro, Mike B. Samoan Kid, Dynamite D. B. Tyrone Little. January 29 Tokyo Korakuen Hall, All Japan, 2100 Sellout, Mighty Inoue B. Manu Kia Mossman, Yoshinari Ogawa B. Kentaro Shiga, Satoru Asako and Tsuyoshi Kikuchi B. Masao Inoue and Ryukaku Izumida, Haruka Eigen and Masafuchi B. Rusher Kimura and Mitsuo Momoda, Asian Tag Team Title Tournament Final Match, Takawa Mori and Junaki Yama B. Tommy Rogers and Bobby Fulton to capture vacant titles, Stan Hansen and Tommy Dreamer B. Abdullah the Butcher and Giant Kimala 2, Toshiaki Kawada and Akira Tao B. Dan Crawford and Doug Furnace 2408, Giant Baba and Mitsuharu Misawa and Kenta Kobashi B. Steve Williams and Johnny Ace and Johnny Smith 2340. January 29 Shinjio, IWA, Cynthia Moreno B. Tomo Araya, Yoshihiro Tajiri B. Teisuk Tao, Crypt Keeper B. Jiraiya, Miguel Perez and Takashi Okano B. Iceman and Aguila Negra, Dick Slater B. Hiroshi Ono, Leatherface and Cactus Jack B. Nobutaka Araya and Shoji Nakamaki. January 30 Jonesboro, Arkansas, Ozark Mountain Wrestling, Motley Crue B. Dave Murray, Steve Sexton B. Spider No. 1, Lightning Express B. Sexton and Rick Butler, Colorado Kid B. Romeo Valentino, AJ Alzado and Crew B. Spiders DQ. Japanese Television Rundown. December 24 New Japan, 1. Tatsumi Fujinami pinned Riki Choshu in 5:39 with a lateral guillotine. A lot better than you'd expect. They put a lot into the short match. It was stiff, well-timed with a lot of heat and Fujinami even threw in a tope. 3 stars, 2. Shinjiro Otani won the UWA Junior Heavyweight title from Norio Onaga in 13:11 with a dragon suplex. The first part was slow but it picked up with a lot of nice moves and near falls back and forth. The heat wasn't as good as in the previous match, however. Onaga used a low blow and flying clothesline that he beat Santo for the title with but Otani kicked out. Otani also kicked out of a Frankensteiner off the top rope and a dandana. 3 3/4 stars, 3. Junji Hirata beat Masa Chono in 7:26 via DQ. Chono attacked Hirata from behind as he was coming to the ring and hit a DDT on the floor. Hirata made a comeback and did a diving headbutt off the apron onto Chono. Chono's eye was swollen shut from a previous match with the two. Chono got the STF on twice, but both times ref Masao Hattori called for a break because Chono was choking rather than cross-facing. Finally Chono threw Hattori out of the ring and grabbed the ring bell. He hit the ref with a ring bell for the DQ and tried to DDT Hirata on it, but Fujinami made the save and used the Dragon Sleeper on Chono. Hirata hit a DDT on Chono on the ring bell and did a headbutt off the top rope onto him while Fujinami counted the 3.2 3/4 stars. 4. Shinya Hashimoto retained the IWGP title, pinning Hiroshi Hayes in 29-11. Only the second half of the match aired and it was every bit as good as an All Japan Budokan World title match. Hashimoto kept delivering the hard kicks and Hayes sold his stomach the entire match. Great flurries. Hayes kept several near falls, including using the Northern Lights suplex, but Hashimoto kicked out. As he went for a second one, Hashimoto blocked it and turned it into a reverse DDT. After a spin kick, Hashimoto used the Fisherman Buster, Fisherman Suplex dropped straight down, for the pin. After the match, Kensuke Sasaki challenged Hashimoto for the next title match. 4.5 stars. UA? Thus far this group has done no counter-attack from the recent raids and is almost in oblivion. Kanek, the biggest star, has talked about retiring, but nobody seems to take him seriously. Mr. Jack, who is now the group's top heel against Kanek, used to wrestle as Alcon Dorado, and his son was getting a big push here before breaking his ankle. Things are so bad that promoter Carlos Maines is renting out his arenas to One Herrera, who has his own wing as part of MLL, figuring the money he makes on rent will be better than promoting the shows on his own. EMLL. The main storyline continues to revolve around a feud with Hector Garza vs El Satanico, probably building to a hair versus hair match. This weekend's Galavision aired the top 2 matches from January 20th with another poor crowd of 700 from Marina Coliseo. Dandy and Negro Casas and Mascara Magica beat Bestia Salvaje and Arcangel de la Muerte and Mano Negro, and Magica pinned Salvaje with an inside cradle off the figure 4 in the third fall. During the second fall they teased a Casas vs Dandy split up with Magica as the peacemaker, but they ended up making up. 3.25 stars. Main event saw Satanico and Dr. Wagner Jr. and Emilio Charles Jr. over Garza and Dos Caras and Ultimo Dragon. They only aired half the second half and the entire third fall on TV. Match didn't look good, but the finish was very good with dives and near falls, ending with Satanico making Garza submit. 2.5 stars. A rematch of the main event, except with Atlantis replacing Dragon on the face side, saw Satanico again make Garza submit in the third fall, but the decision was reversed after the match when Satanico refused to stop beating on him. Heels Bestia Salvaje and Black Power broke up on January 26 in Mexico City, bloodying each other up to set up a new feud. EMLL did draw a sellout 5,500 a few weeks back in Acapulco for a singles tournament that saw Dandy beat Casas in the finals. Aguila Solitaria, Pierroth Tito and Javier Volks were all suspended for 2 weeks for no showing on January 1. Next Arena Mexico tour starts February 17. Because of the economic situation, the promotion announced that the only foreigners they are planning on using in 1995 are Corazon de Leon, who returns February 17, Black Magic and Vampiro. Newspapers have reported Promel making offers for both Magic and Vampiro, and rumors abound of AAA going after Corazon. Reina Jubuki is feuding with Lady Apache, so expect CMLL title matches down the road. All Japan. There were 4 major matches as the January tour winded to a close this past week. The biggest was the January 24 tag title match with Mitsuharu Misawa and Kenta Kobashi retaining their world and international tag team titles, going to another 60-minute draw with Toshiaki Kawada and Akira Tao. After going probably since 1985 or 1986 without a 60-minute draw, the last one I recall was a Jumbo Tsuruta vs Riki Choshu singles match. They did 2 of them in the space of 5 days. This match, or at least the last 20 minutes of it, aired on television over the weekend. The match had a storyline that Misawa was knocked out by a punch to the chin from Kawada at the 24-minute mark. This meant from that point until the 50-minute mark, Kobashi was wrestling a handicap match against both of them, but they couldn't beat him. Finally Misawa recovered and made the comeback. On January 25 in Fukushima, the match to determine the next challenger for Kawada's Triple Crown World title saw Stan Hansen pin Akira Tao with the lariat in 17:59. The other 2 took place on the final night of the tour, January 29 at Tokyo Korakuen Hall. The final match of the Asian Tag Team title tournament came down to Jun Akiyama and Takao Omori beating Tommy Rogers and Bobby Fulton when Akiyama pinned Fulton in 1740 with the Urinage suplex. The tournament from the start seemed built around these two teams going to the finals. The other major match on that show saw Kawada and Tao beat Dan Crawford and Doug Furnas in 24:08. After the match, in a post-match press interview, Baba announced that on March 4 at Budokan Hall, which will be the next major show, it'll be Kawada vs Hansen for the Triple Crown and Misawa and Kobashi defending the tag titles against Steve Williams and Johnny Ace, but also made mention that because of how impressive Crawford and Furnas were on the tour that they would be in line for a future title match. Baba also announced that they'll be holding the Champion Carnival Singles Tournament with all the top names in the promotion participating from mid-March through mid-April. Tom Zank quit the promotion over not getting a raise. The January 14 television show did a 2.8 rating while January 21 did a 2.3, both of which are excellent for the slot. New Japan. Sad news from the training school at trainee Hiromitsu Gombe, 22. Passed away on January 30 at a Tokyo hospital after undergoing brain surgery. Gombe, a collegiate national champion wrestler, had just started training with the company on January 20. On January 26 during training he took a bump wrong on his head and was taken to the hospital where brain surgery was immediately done, but he didn't recover. Gombe was on the Senshu College wrestling team, the same team which springboarded both Riki Choshu and Hiroshi Hayes to the Olympic Games, and he was considered an Olympic hopeful in the 220-pound class for Atlanta. He had won 2 national collegiate titles at Senshu. As a sophomore in 1992 he took the Greco-Roman Nationals at 178 pounds and as a senior captured the Nationals in Greco at 220. Since New Japan has employed so many ex-Olympic wrestlers, for athletic credibility, the company has wanted one of its wrestlers to go to the Olympics now that the rules have been changed and medal, both because it'll help the wrestler get over and give the company credibility. Several years ago Yoshiaki Yatsu, who was one of the top workers in the company at the time, had that as his goal and easily captured the Japanese nationals in the 286-pound class, but the IOC ruled him ineligible, ruling that pro wrestling was a sport and that made him a professional athlete. The Olympics have since done away with those archaic and hypocritical strict rules on amateur status, and pro wrestlers are eligible to compete in the Olympics. It is expected that Dennis Kozlowski, who formerly worked for U.W.F.I., Dan Severn and a few of the Japanese will all at least try out for their respective national teams in 2 years. They are running an angle where Tatsumi Fujinami is going to miss the next tour, which starts this week. The angle is that New Japan wants him to retire but that he doesn't want to. So he's going to the United States and going to work small indie shows to build himself up from the bottom once again. Japanese are trying to book Fujinami on US Indies in mid-February to get the angle over. New Japan announced a tour after the one which starts this week from March 7 to March 27 with CWA champion Rambo, Tony St. Clair, Wild Pegasus, Black Tiger, Nasty Boys, March 7 to March 17, and Hawk Warrior, March 18 to March 27. During that tour will be the Young Lions tournament in prelims with Manabu Nakanishi, Yuji Nagata, Tokumitsu Ishizawa, Shinjiro Otani, Tatsuhito Takaiwa, Yoshi Utaka and PWFG's Yuki Ishikawa. The biggest shows will be March 19 in Nagoya, in which Antonio Inoki will wrestle, and ringside is priced at $200, and Thanks Wrestling Day 2 on March 27 at the Tokyo Coliseum with ringside cut down to $50 as a fan appreciation special. Television ratings on January 14, Hashimoto vs Sasaki from Tokyo Dome, were 1.9 on January 21, Steiners vs Muto and Hayes from Dome, were 2.9. Jushin Liger has said he'd like to return to action at the April 2 Tokyo Dome, but said it may still be the May Fukuoka Dome before he's ready. For more background on why the deal with Hiroyoshi Yamamoto, Tenzan, in regard to this publication became such a big heated deal, the reason is that when New Japan's Joe Daigo, former wrestler Tokyo Joe, arranged to Hiroyoshi to go to Austria for Otto wants to get away for 2 years to gain size and experience, Daigo expressly made clear that he must never use steroids, and thus even the hint or a suggestion hit a nerve. Other Japan notes. Biggest show of the past week was January 25 at Budokan Hall, where Rings completed its Battle Dimension 94 tournament, which Falcon beating Akira Maeda in the finals in 14:19 with a knee lock before 13,526 fans. We had several reports from the show saying the card was great and the main event was excellent, within the Rings limitations of everything having to be believable. The turnout was a great boost to rings which had seemed to lack fire and interest over the past year with Maida's popularity going down, but this showed in the right situation he still has major drawing power. I believe it was the largest crowd for a rings show in more than 2 years. In the third place match, Hans Niemann defeated Yoshihisa Yamamoto. 2 American pro wrestlers were on the show. Tony Halme, WWF's Ludwig Borga, lost to Dick Leon Frey via knockout in 8-11 and even got a bloody nose in the process to set up what will probably be a feud between the 2 foreign boxers, and WCW prelim wrestler Mark Starr worked as Mark Ashford, losing to Mitsuya Nagai. Pancrase ran January 26 in Nagoya, drawing a sellout 3,679 for a triple feature as Wayne Shamrock beat Leon Dyke with an Achilles tendon submission. Bas Rutten defeated number 1 contender Manabu Yamada in 105, and Masakatsu Funaki reversed an earlier loss, beating Jason DeLucia in 908 with the Achilles heel submission. Next show is March 10 in Yokohama, with Shamrock defending their version of the World Heavyweight title against Rutten. Renka Perdowel returns on that show. Pancrase prelim wrestler Vernon Tiger White entered the Japan Open Karate Tournament on January 22 but lost all 3 of his matches. UWF announced its complete card for February 18 at Tokyo Bay-NK Hall, with Nobuhiko Takada vs Kazuo Yamazaki, Kiyoshi Tamura vs Masahito Kakihara, Naoki Sano vs Gene Laddick, Yuko Miyata vs Billy Scott as the top bouts. They're leaving both Vader, because of this date's proximity to the Baltimore pay-per-view, and Gary Albright off the show because they are running a 7,000-seat arena. The April 9 show, originally scheduled for Kobe, was moved to Nagoya Rainbow Hall, and they'll need a loaded lineup because Nagoya has always been the weakest of the major cities for this style. Most of the promotions have done various types of fundraisers for the earthquake victims in Kobe. Yoshiaki Fujiwara and Great Sasuke raised $23,000 donating merchandise to an auction on January 22 at Korakuen Hall. All the groups are doing various benefits, with EVA this past week using its Monster Heels, Crypt Keeper, Leatherface and Cactus Jack collecting money in front of the buildings. War and Heisei Ishingun are working together, doing numerous angles right now in a promotion versus promotion feud. Shiro Koshinaka and Tatsutoshi Goto and Michioshi Ohara hold the War Trios titles, and former champs Geto and Jado and Hiromichi Fuyuki asked for a rematch on the War February 6 Korakuen Hall show. Koshinaka refused, saying they were going to defend the belts on their own shows, and then challenged the injured Genichiro Tenryu to a singles match. Tenryu is scheduled to return on March 11. The biggest show of the recent High Tour was January 27 in Nagoya, which drew 3,200, about double their usual crowd, as Sabu and Masachono lost their first match as a tag team to Koshinaka and Goto when Sabu did the job for Koshinaka, returning the favor from their December 26 singles match. There were 2 prelim upsets involving another promotion versus promotion feud with High vs Social Pro Wrestling Federation. High Zohara upset Yatsu when several High wrestlers interfered. Then SPWF Saisao Takagi upset Kengo Kimura when Yatsu interfered. While this is traditional American-style booking, it's rarely used in Japan. On January 29, High's Kimura and Koshinaka went to the New Japan Dojo in another angle to recruit Hiroyoshi Tenzan to join their promotion. Tenzan, who is getting the big push as the youngest wrestler ever to challenge for the IWGP World title next week, didn't accept. On February 12, High has an afternoon show at Korakuen Hall while New Japan has an evening show, and Koshinaka asked Tenzan to come to his show to see the group because they want him to join. High's show will have a double main event: Koshinaka and Goto and Great Kabuki vs Yatsu and Masa Saito and Mystery Partner. Rumor is it'll be Riki Choshu reforming the old Ishingun trio from 10 years back with his former partners against the new Ishingun, plus Sabu and Tasmaniac vs Kunyaki Kobayashi and Kimura. On the War Tour, which includes several cage matches on top and begins February 6, they're doing an angle to start a new program for Ultimo Dragon. Masao Orihara, who is out with a legit injury, announced on January 27 that he is bringing a wrestler in from Mexico who is superior to Yoshihiro Asai and will capture his NWA middleweight title, and called him the Ultimate Dragon, and he'll manage him. Ultimate Dragon debuts on February 6 at Korakuen Hall, teaming with Dos Caras against Ultimo Dragon and Masanobu Kurisu. War is planning a major show at March 26 at Tokyo Sumo Hall, which goes head-to-head with the All Japan Women major show the same night at Yokohama Arena. Nothing is official, but they are working on either Tenryu vs Koji Kao or a tag match with Tenryu and a partner against Atsushi Onita and Tarzan Goto. Underneath will be a one-night junior heavyweight tournament similar to the Super J Cup that Ultimo Dragon is putting together. Cal's promotion has Korakuen Hall booked on February 21 with a one-night singles tournament that will include Al Snow, Koki Kitahara, WAR, Hiroshi Itakura, WAR, Kurisu, WAR, Richard Byrne, and a surprise TBA. Onita announced that he will be leaving FMW completely after the May 5 Kawasaki Stadium show, not just retiring from the ring but also giving up his control of the company. The angle they are working right now is that Onita is teaching Katsutoshi Niyama and Mr. Ganasuke to be able to carry the FMW banner against one staring in the company. Next tour opens February 6 with those three in a Falls Count Anywhere against Mr. Pogo and the Gladiator and Yukihiro Kanemura. On February 24 at Korakuen Hall, Pogo and Gladiator defend the World Brass Knucks tag titles against Onita and Ganasuke. Tarzan Goto vs Hisakatsu Oya is the semi-final on both shows. The March 26 All Japan Women's Show at Yokohama Arena won't be a joint show as apparently the group feels it's time to run a major arena show on its own. They want to save the inter-promotional matches for the Tokyo Dome in November so they'll be unique rather than doing them at several shows this year. In addition, there are those who are tired of working with LLPW and FMW because of backstage heat, last-minute problems and demands from the smaller groups to have their girls win matches they probably shouldn't, e-Combat Toyota over Yumiko Hata at the Dome show, and not wanting their top stars, Shinobu Kandori and Megumi Kudo respectively, to do jobs for AJW wrestlers on the big shows, which is why neither was in the V tournament at the Dome. AJW also isn't going to use Akira Hokuto because they feel they need to get the girls who are there every night over as drawing cards and Hokuto would overshadow everything else on the show. Hokuto vs Bull Nakano will take place at the April Stadium show in North Korea. They held tryouts for new spots on January 29 with 36 girls trying out and 7 being kept, a far cry from years back when hundreds would try out. The reason the girls today are so good is because when 500 try out and 10 are kept based on how well they do on various athletic skill tests, you know you are only getting the top caliber athletes, so being great natural athletes to start with is going to lead to a greater chance of developing in Hokuto or a Toyota. Now it's far easier to make it so the odds the new girls are as good athletically decreases. Shinya Kojika and Kazuo Sakurada, Kendo Nagasaki's New Dai Nippon Pro Wrestling starts March 16 to March 22. Miki Ibaragi's One Staring starts March 25 announcing that Shane Douglas, Public Enemy, Pitbulls and Tasmaniac will be on the tour, which has already caused controversy. Since Tasmaniac is with High and definitely won't be on this tour. In addition, it's during the school year so getting Douglas for a week would be difficult. Douglas works full-time as a school teacher in the Pittsburgh area and only wrestles out of the area on weekends. From what we're told, Ibaragi made the announcement after only one meeting with Paul E. Dangerously and before a deal was finalized, so all announcements are premature, although everyone in Japan expects Jason the Terrible from One Staring to show up at the ECW show on February 4. USWA. The January 30 Memphis show was to be headlined with a unique marathon gimmick where Jerry Lawler, Brian Christopher and Bill Dundee would wrestle one another in 10-minute intervals, and the person who scored the most pinfalls during the 60-minute period, everyone has 2 10-minute matches against everyone else, will get a shot at Sid Vicious on next week's show. Vicious wasn't booked this week. The rest of the lineup was Tommy Rich and Doug Gilbert vs PG-13 in a Boys in the Hood match where all weapons brought into the ring are legal, Scott Studd vs Gorgeous George III, Rob Kellum aka Robbie Eagle, Moondog Rex and Miss Texas vs Reggie B. Fine and Sweet Georgia Brown, Spellbinder vs King Cobra and Moondog Spot vs Jim Harris. During interviews, Lawler, Dundee and Christopher all promised not to bring any foreign objects with them, which means they probably all will. On the January 23 show, during the third fall of the Vicious vs Brian Christopher match, Dundee came to ringside and Christopher started yelling at him. Vicious attacked Christopher from behind and had him pinned, but Christopher got his foot over the rope, but Dundee shoved his foot off the rope. Technically Dundee hasn't turned, although the hints are getting stronger. Dundee in an interview claimed announcer Corey Macklin was a liar and said the only reason he came to ringside was to help Christopher because he was doing so poorly. Gilbert now has orange hair. Looks like a failed attempt to become a redhead. George is doing a British accent gimmick but was disappointing in his debut on television January 28. He's managed by Bad Business Brown. Scott Bowden is gone. He was a Memphis State College student who apparently graduated at the semester and is now looking for work in his field, and wrestling was just a job while in school. SMW. Jim Cornette's Super Saturday Night Fever drew 2,000 fans and $16,000 to the Knoxville City Coliseum on January 28. After D. Lo Brown beat Brian Logan in the opener. Chris Candido came out with Dennis Corraluzzo, Tammy Fitch and a guy named Guido for his match with Boo Bradley. They came out with an injunction stating Bradley was insane and the match should be cancelled. Ref Mark Curtis, Brian Hildebrand, then said that he was both an SMW and NWA sanctioned referee and, since Fitch was suspended, if all three didn't leave ringside, that he would strip Candido of the NWA title and give it to Bradley, which is a really scary thought. Fitch came back out dressed like a bag lady and threw Candido a gimmick, but Bradley got it away from him and used it for the pin. The next match was scheduled as a tag title match with Rock and Roll Express defending against Unabom, Glenn Jacobs, and Eddie Gilbert. Reportedly during the week, Gilbert left a message on Cornette's answering machine saying that if Cornette wanted him to be there for the show, he'd be there because he didn't want to burn another bridge. When Cornette called the Puerto Rican number he had left, it was disconnected. Cornette called Gilbert's parents and got the message that they wanted him there, but Gilbert never actually called, and there was a lot of backstage betting on whether or not he'd be there. He wasn't, and Unabom got on the house mic and said he didn't know where he was and didn't care and wanted to face both in a handicap match. They ended up doing a Morton vs Unabom match, ending with Unabom throwing him over the top for a DQ. In a match to determine the #1 contender for the SMW title, Buddy Landel pinned Tracy Smothers in what was said to have been Landel's best match since returning. Landel pulled out Nux, but Smothers got them and the ref caught Smothers with them. As the two were arguing, Landel pulled out a chin and hit Smothers with it for the pin. Jerry Lawler then won the SMW title from Dirty White Boy in a match with Landel as timekeeper. Lawler did a Don Rickles routine insulting fans and getting great heat, but there was no wrestling at all in the match. At one point Lawler pointed to a fat woman in the crowd and asked if that was the dirty white girl, and Landel grabbed the mic from ringside and said that the white girl was in the back of the building with the gangstas. Anyway, at about 13 minutes in, White Boy hit the Buck Snort Blaster and went for the pin, but Landel rang the bell at 2, claiming the 60-minute time limit had expired. They were doing 5-minute calls, which made this even funnier. The ref finally threw Landel out of there, but Landel started arguing and there was a ref bump. Landel gave White Boy a pile driver and put Lawler on top, left the ring, and the ref got up and counted the 3. Landel then demanded his lights-out match with White Boy to begin at that moment. Landel kept beating on White Boy, but White Boy scored a schoolboy pin out of nowhere. Heavenly Bodies vs Gangstas was a 4 1/4 stars brawl with heavy juice, tons of foreign objects, brawling all over the building, in the back involving D. Lo Brown and Cornette, all taped for television that will air this coming weekend, through the dressing room, across the street dodging traffic and into the Hyatt Hotel parking lot. Maine was a Rumble Royal won by Morton, and after the match Unabom used sandpaper to mess up Morton's face, since Morton appears on television the next 2 weeks with his face bandaged, which was originally supposed to be from a Gilbert fireball. February 25 in Johnson City, Tennessee for Brawl in the Hall has Landel vs TBA, Candido vs Bradley in a loser eats dog food match, Smothers and Scott Armstrong and Bob Armstrong vs Gangstas and D. Lo Brown, Rock and Roll defending against Unabom and TBA, Lawler defends against White Boy and Bodies vs Gangstas in a street fight. February 26 in Knoxville for Sunday Bloody Sunday 2 has The Nightmare vs TBA, Rock and Roll's defending against Unabom and TBA, Candido vs Bradley in a dog collar chain match, which I believe is Candido's last night in, Gangstas vs Smothers and Scott Armstrong. Lawler defends vs White Boy, winner of Lawler White Boy then defends against Landel, and Bodies and Cornette vs Brown and Gangstas with Bob Armstrong as special referee. TBAs are guys Cornette is looking for to fill the spots, and he needs to find them before February 6 when he does his next television tapings. One will be a pushed babyface and the other the heel tag team partner of Unabom. He's talking with Al Snow about one of the spots, but no deal was done at press time. They did cut new promos for spot shows talking about Gilbert as Unabom's partner even though he won't be there. Cornette's belief is that they can't say Gilbert is gone for 2 weeks because he's still on television for the next 2 weeks. On the first show of the new taping they'll announce he was suspended for something or other. They'll be doing Morton vs Unabom at the house shows instead of the tags. We have the same difference of opinion on this in that I think they should just advertise singles matches at the spot show instead of a tag title match, but Cornette is advertising based on the angles as they appear on television, which is a tag team title match even though Gilbert won't be there, and they'll be doing singles bouts instead. Cornette believes New Jack's arrest last weekend is nothing to worry about and was joking about when New Jack was taken in and an officer shot a photo of him that New Jack thought was his mugshot. The officer then asked him to autograph the picture. A lot of the initial incident was captured by the SMW cameras that were filming the aborted angle where Scott Armstrong was supposed to get his knee injured. Supposedly the cameras show the fan shoving New Jack first. New Jack shoved back in a younger police officer who had never been to wrestling before interceded and they shoved each other, which led to the arrest. Bodies did put over Gangstas on January 27 in Cookeville, Tennessee in a surprise match before 263 fans. ECW. Shane Douglas vs. Tully Blanchard will headline the February 4 Philadelphia show after all. The storyline they're trying to push is that Blanchard came back and tried to be a wrestler, which is why the first match was so boring. They don't outright say this but strongly hint at it, but that this time he's coming in as a brawler as the old Tully Blanchard as opposed to the new Tully Blanchard. From what I understand, this will be a lengthy program and during upcoming interviews, Douglas will talk about Blanchard's days with the Four Horsemen when he would do matches high on coke and drunk. After February 4, the next ECW arena date scheduled at press time was March 18, although they may take a date in between. This group got a local TV clearance in Birmingham, Alabama on WAB-CH 68 at 11 a.m. Saturdays. The station currently is airing Jim Crockett's Dallas tapes in that slot, and station officials claim they aren't making a change nor are they interested in any new wrestling shows. History of doing this newsletter has shown that when a wrestling promotion that isn't totally out in left field like a Herb Abrams group announces a clearance and you call the TV station and they say no, that 85 times out of 100 it's the TV station that's the one not telling the truth, which says something from that industry when wrestling promoters are more likely to be telling the truth. Similarly, when a promoter with a decent rep announces a show in a building and the building says there is no deal and no show, odds are 85% that there is, and it's the building that won't reveal it because tickets aren't on sale yet and they don't want to be bothered by people calling when they don't have tickets to sell them. ECW claims the Davie, Florida show drew 548 paid, although there were about 300 in the building because the weather was so horrible the day of the show, and that Orlando drew 427, we had reported 300, but the shows were a success because they did $7,200 in merchandise, mainly videotape sales, at the two shows, which by American standards is a remarkable per cap for souvenirs. They'll return to Florida in April. For those in the New York area, MSG is bouncing the show around so there is no set time, and these are the February air dates: February 5th, February 6th, February 10th, February 13th, February 25th, all at 1 a.m. TV this week aired from Davie, Florida, with a match between Chris Benoit vs. Too Cold Scorpio. It was like the 1-2-3 Kid and Razor vs. Diesel and Shawn Michaels WWF TV match of a few months back, but as far as crowd goes, multiplied by 10. Multiplied in that the guys were doing this fantastic match and there was 10 times less reaction, with fans just sitting there with their arms folded, not into it at all. The same match in a building where the fans were into wrestling would have been 4.5 stars. The other bout they aired was Shane Douglas vs. Ron Simmons, and even with a lot of mic work and good psychology and a great finishing spot, Simmons went to press Douglas off the top rope a la Flair, but Douglas grabbed Simmons' bad arm and jumped off the top rope to the floor, pump handling the bad arm, causing Simmons being unable to continue. The crowd heat was only slightly better. For more info on the weekly showings of ECW television off the Philadelphia satellite every Tuesday night at Dirty Al's in Marietta, Georgia, you can call 404-974-5942. Here and there. Windy City Wrestling will be running weekly Friday night shows at the Sunset Reception Hall in Fort Wayne, Indiana starting this week. Promotional snafu number 176. Virginia promoter Doug Ward had a show last week with advertising all over the town with himself, Doug Gibson, versus Tully Blanchard on top with posters everywhere, but forgot to make a deal with the high school and there was no show. Peach State Wrestling on March 10 in Cordell, Georgia, with a battle royal to determine matches including Cactus Jack, Jake Roberts, Too Cold Scorpio, Scotty Flamingo, and Rob Van Dam. NWC, coming off a sellout of 1,500 on January 13 with Cactus Jack vs. Sabu cage match, returns February 11 with a battle royal, Terry Funk vs. Virgil in a branding iron match, and Junkyard Dog, Tonga Kid, and Ron Race. The Battlecade group that was supposed to tape its first shows on January 20 at the Manhattan Center again canceled at the last minute. They are still claiming they are going to run, but 4 TV cancellations in a row isn't a good starting sign. ESPN2 has been running boxing in their time slot. Former wrestler Paul Butcher Vachon will be running for office in a Montreal suburb on the new Democratic Party ticket. AAA. Juan Francisco Cortez, who was Antonio Peña's chief business officer at AAA, was fired as part of a Televisa shakeup that cost thousands of jobs within the umbrella organization. The economic problems, at least thus far, seem more to be affecting the group from an organizational standpoint rather than at the gate. Televisa's stock dropped drastically in a stock market crash, so the company is cutting corners, and most likely wrestling will be no exception. The first joint AAA/Promel show on January 27 in Querétaro drew a sellout 5,500 as Tinieblas Sr. and Cibernetico and Perro Aguayo and El Hijo del Santo defeated Conan and Eddie Guerrero, and El Signo and Negro Navarro. When in the third fall, Guerrero attacked Conan from behind and led him, getting pinned doing another turn. The television of the first turn on January 6 finally aired this past weekend, so Conan starts at the house shows this coming week on the face side, with his first major face show being on February 5 at Rio Nilo Coliseum in Tonalá. A lot of talk about what is going to happen because his top heel foe, Guerrero, is booked both in Tonalá and in Anaheim, California. The date, based on the precedent set with the current suspensions of Rey Mysterio Jr., Psicosis, Torero, Super Muñeco, etc. for working indie shows in Los Angeles. If consistency is kept, Guerrero would also have to be suspended if he works that show or no shows in Tonalá, which would be terrible timing considering the current storyline. There were a lot of problems between Conan and Tinieblas over Tinieblas not selling and Conan putting him in a Fujiwara armbar, but things were worked out by the January 29 show. Tinieblas is being used as the top drawing card for Promel, so he has to be kept strong on television because he has name value from the 60s and 70s as a movie and wrestling superstar, but he's now in his 50s and is way out of date with the current crew. The January 28 show in Guanajuato at an outdoor baseball stadium drew a half house with Aguayo and Octagon and Tinieblas Jr. vs. Fishman and Angel Blanco Jr. and Guerrero on top. Carlos La Momia, who returned on that show, is the father of Super Glow. Promel is running in a lot of 1,000 and 1,500 seat buildings in Mexico City promoted by Raul Reyes, and they did draw a sellout in Durango on January 22. Negotiations to bring in Ultimo Dragon are said to be getting serious. Dr. Wagner Jr. negotiations are stiff-iffy. January 29 in Salamanca head-to-head with the Super Bowl drew a sellout 4,000 and reportedly another 3,000 were turned away. They were originally afraid of doing a taping against the Super Bowl, which is probably why they booked a small arena. Main was La Parca and Santo and Tinieblas Sr. and Cibernetico against Conan and Guerrero and Navarro and Signo. This time the heels turned on Conan in the first fall and Guerrero gave him a Fisherman Buster, a new move to Mexico that has become big in Japan, which Conan sold like it was a pile driver and he was carried out of the ring. During the third fall, when Navarro was chasing a Lush, the 2-foot-tall mascot of Tinieblas, down the aisle, Conan came down the aisle and saved a Lush from Navarro and got into the ring for a comeback and cleared the ring of the heels. Cibernetico, who is a 20-year-old green bodybuilder who was given a mega push by Uwa from his first match of his life late last year, isn't over at all, but they feel he has potential. Parca is over huge and his work as a face is nothing short of amazing. While he's probably doing too much comedy for main events, his high spots are much better than when he was a heel, which is high praise. After the show, Antonio Peña told him that at this rate he could be the next Rayo de Jalisco, Sr., who was the most charismatic wrestler in Mexico during the 60s. The women debuted with all new ring outfits and gimmicks. Sirenita dressed like Daryl Hannah in Splash, Neftali as Cleopatra, Janet will be doing a gimmick where every week she imitates a famous Mexican woman celebrity, etc., and because they are being given a push, they are working harder, but they just aren't any good. Conan was pulled from the February 1 show in Aguascalientes because the last time he was there as a heel he got into a brawl in the stands when fans attacked him and nearly rioted after the match, and the police won't let him back, so the main event has been changed to Aguayo and Octagon and Latin Lover and Parca vs. Guerrero and Heavy Metal and Mascara Año 2000 and Jerry Estrada. The January 28 of Ocasiones, a daily sports and news national newspaper, ran an entire column listing the 1994 Observer Awards results, heavily playing up the place winners from AAA and AAA winning Best Promotion. It's funny that the Observer Awards probably reached in total exposure readership of more than 1 million worldwide, yet very little of that was in the United States or even in English for that matter. Both Mil Mascaras and El Santo Negro debut for Promel on February 1 in Mexico City. Mascaras is staying an independent but is doing some Promel shots. The mags this week had graphic photos of Mascara Sagrada surgery from the shoulder injury from Japan. They took out a chunk of bone 4 mm x 30 cm from 2 spots in his spinal column, but he's expected back in 3 months. Reports are that dates for San Jose, Los Angeles and Fresno will be announced for late March, although they aren't finalized at press time. Galavision was hot this past weekend with the final Old Show in the Canas. Next week they are scheduled to air January 6 from Wanda La Barrera Gym in the Con turn and debut of the Uruguays. In a non-title match, Los Payasos won 2 straight over Los Destructors. Mainly brawling with blood and dives, 3 stars. Not great because Payasos are so much better as heels. Very strange booking to have a team that is about to get title shots lose a non-title match in 2 straight falls, both by submission. Next, Fuerza Guerrera and Juventud Guerrera and Espectro win 2 straight falls from El Hijo del Santo and Latin Lover in heavy metal. Santo was pinned for the first fall, and after a spectacular second fall, Santo missed his spearhead butt off the top rope and Fuerza made him submit to a camel clutch, which was an amazing finish to see Santo submit to his own favorite hold. In September they did that, but it was a finish caused by cheating, while this was clean with no controversy. After the match, Metal attacked Santo for losing both falls, which was the stage 1 of his heel turn, 4 stars. Main saw Los Hermanos Dinamita, Cien Caras and Brothers, and Jerry Estrada beat La Parca and Perro Aguayo in Octagon and Lismark in 26-13. This was also super with great heat. Parca was just amazing in the face roll and the Dinamitas were working really hard as well. After many near falls and 2 non-captain falls with Universo 2000 and Lismark being pinned, then 2 Thez presses by Octagon and Aguayo off the apron, Estrada was left with Parca. After several more near falls, Estrada made Parca submit in a shocking finish, which sets up Parca defending the Mexican light heavyweight strap against Estrada sometime soon, 4 1/4 stars. WCW. The general belief, although not official, is that Ric Flair's first match back will be at Slamboree, which is now May 21 at the Bayfront Center in St. Petersburg, probably in the tag with Vader against Hogan and Savage, and that Flair will take Race's spot as Vader's manager. Also that Hogan and Vader will do their program without clean finishes because of the political and ego problems, which is where Flair comes in, because that way at least someone will do a job. Apparently there was supposed to be a little more than transpired in the Flair appearance at the Clash, although no physical involvement was planned. Except very little in the way of American shows during April and May. April 17 to April 30 is a South Pacific tour and May 22 to June 1 in a German tour. There are only 5 house shows booked in April in the US because of the South Pacific tour, including a April 1 Philadelphia date at Penn Hall. The only May house show is the pay-per-view, since they'll be doing Disney the early part of the month. WCW is doing Disney tapings this week, although they seem to reveal less because worldwide when it comes to angles and creativity has become a throwaway show. Mainly to give Eric Bischoff a chance to spout off. This past week during a Nasty Boys squash match where Tom Burton was one of the jobbers, Bischoff mentioned how Burton was on a pay-per-view, UWFI, with another group that is supposed to have tough wrestling, but the Nasty Boys were handling him with no problem. He then said that people have seen Ken Wayne Shamrock on pay-per-view and he's supposed to be tough, but when Jerry Saggs of the Nasty Boys got a hold of him, he came out second best, or words to that effect. Actually, there was an infamous hotel room brawl with both Nasty Boys and Shamrock several years ago, and Shamrock was beaten up really badly when all 3 were working for South Atlantic Pro Wrestling and Shamrock was Vince Torelli. Every version I heard was it was 2-on-1. After WCW officials claimed Van Hammer hadn't worked for the company in 2 years because of his drug bust, who was on WCW Pro in the morning on January 21. WCW officials sent Paul Levesque a letter saying that his contract's non-complete clause will be enforced, which means that even though he's done with WCW, WCW is claiming contractually he can't join WWF until May 21, so unless he wants to challenge it, which will cost money but he'd have a good chance at winning, he's on ice the next 4 months. I guess it shows the heat between the two groups and the wrestlers getting caught in the middle of it because they are going to play hardball enforcing contracts and non-compete clauses. For the second straight weekend they aired the Wrong House show promos, giving the cards from the previous week. Someone joked that they did so well in Dayton last week that they wanted to relive it this week. Aside from that, the WCW Saturday Night Show on January 28 with the Savage vs. Anderson match was the best show in a while. Tickets for WCW Uncensored pay-per-view in Tupelo, Mississippi on March 19 are already on sale. No word on the card, although it's largely expected to be headlined by a Hogan-Vader rematch and a complete gimmick match card. It is confirmed that WCW will be raising its pay-per-view prices from $24.95 to $27.50 and adding a $32.50 price for day of the show purchases. Obviously they think that by raising the price they won't drop in orders and thus make more money. It's a very simple economic decision and my bet is they'll probably turn out to be right on it. In the vast majority of cases, history has shown that increasing prices for major shows doesn't keep people from attending. Plus, an increase in revenue justifies the Hogan deal. High prices probably have an effect in keeping fans from attending what they perceive as weak shows. Weekend house shows were all the same as last week, doing from 1,600 to 2,200 fans in Raleigh, Fayetteville and Winston-Salem respectively. Ratings for the weekend of January 21 saw WCW Saturday Night do a 2.3 and Pro a 1.6 with main event preempted. Early reports are that the January 28 WCW Saturday Night came off the Clash with a 2.8. For whatever this is worth, tradition over the past 2 years is that WCW seems to always follow its Wednesday clashes with strong Saturday night ratings, plus with main event preempted again, that's also going to help the number, and this is the time of the year when ratings are going to rebound with the cold weather and no football, but in any case, 2.8 is the highest number in a few months. WWF. Notes from the TV tapings. Superstars taping on January 24 in West Palm Beach, Florida saw in a tryout match, Bill Payne, Tampa area wrestler, over Jim Tilquist, of Phi Delta Slam. Hakushi and Shinja did the non-taped heel interview so they'd get booed. Lex Luger pinned Tatanka and Davey Boy Smith pinned Bob Backlund, while Bret beat Owen with the sharpshooter in matches that were probably not taped for television. No newcomers at the taping. In television matches or angles, they did a Smoking Guns vs. Head Shrinkers title match which ended when it appeared the Shrinkers would win the title when the Blue Brothers and Uncle Zebediah ran in, and they wound up with all three teams fighting each other, so perhaps they're setting up a triangular deal at WM. They did a battle royal where the very thing elimination saw Davey Boy Smith throw out Shawn Michaels, weird since he's in the Mania main event. Jerry Lawler did the Michaels deal where one foot touched and he was about to get in when Bret Hart attacked him and knocked him off the apron to a big pop. Smith ended up throwing out one of the Blue Brothers even though Michaels tried to cause him to lose. With Diesel in Vegas for the NatB convention, Michaels interviewed a cardboard cutout of Diesel calling him a paper champion. They also did an angle for the encore show of Rumble that aired January 31. Roddy Piper came out on crutches with them, saying he had been attacked by a shark while spearfishing. Rumor has it was actually hip replacement surgery, as he showed the surgery scar when he lifted up his kilt. They taped the cutaways and then brought out Michaels. Piper spit at Michaels and Michaels knocked Piper down off his crutches. Challenge/Action Zone on January 25 in North Fort Myers, Florida was pretty uneventful. Black Phantom, Dave Heath, got a win in a dark match. Raymond Roju interviewed Michaels again, talking about wanting a new bodyguard. While I don't know this as a fact, it appears rumors of it being Brian Lee are out since Lee was recently dropped from his Titan contract, so that must be the all-time record for taking heat over one really bad match. Hakushi beat Bob Holly for Action Zone while Bob Backlund beat Smith via DQ, and Bret and Smith over Owen, and Backlund and Jarrett kept the title, beating Adam Bomb. Arena main event was Diesel over Bundy in a negative star match. Monday Night Raw on January 23 with the tag title match did a 2.7 rating, while Action Zone with the Rumble drawings did a 1.6 and Mania a 1.4. They were dropping hints in commentary of an eventual Bret vs. Hakushi feud. Yokozuna represented Titan at the NatB convention, so put all rumors out to pasture of him retiring or going to WCW. He's simply been ordered to lose weight for his own health before going back on the road. On a WCW telecast this past weekend, Hogan went on and on about WCW being the new generation of wrestling. Looks like Stephanie Wyann's performance at Rumble wasn't unnoticed. On the Live Mania cutaways from Hartford on January 28 at the ticket window, they wouldn't let her do any interviews, even having Ted DiBiase acting as a straight man rather than a heel, handling all of them, including one with Bret Hart. She blew it live again by saying there were hundreds of people there buying tickets, which, even though true, in wrestling lies should have said thousands to act like the show was important. It is surprising when the company does angles or finishes with a little more depth than before than even people who should know better think they are shoots. If something was a shoot on WWF TV, it could happen live, but it would never appear on tape, and if it did happen live, there would be no build-up and it would guaranteed never be mentioned again. It does look like Bigelow will eventually come out of this situation as a babyface, judging from the Slim Jim commercials and the interviews he's doing. The George Michael Sports Machine on January 29 aired the Bigelow-Taylor angle. WWF will tape April 3 in Lowell, Massachusetts with a live Raw after Mania. February 20 Raw show originally scheduled for Marietta, Georgia will be in Macon, Georgia. Guess Marietta is too close to Atlanta for comfort. Ken Norton Jr. was announced as a celeb for Mania. You can really see the Jim Ross influence with athletes as celebs rather than entertainers and with more serious angles. The King's Court where Backlund put the chicken wing on Lawler was hilarious because of the comments of McMahon and Michaels in the voiceovers. They portrayed the situation like Backlund was the face and that this wasn't a one-time deal. When Backlund was supposed to say he could put the chicken wing on anyone including you to Lawler, he instead said he could put the chicken wing on anyone including yours truly, and Michaels picked up on it and said he can put the chicken wing on himself, and McMahon responded, "Well, if anyone can do it, Bob Backlund can." Smoking Guns vs. Kid and Holly rematch was better than the first meeting, 3¼ stars, because Kid was awesome. It was like two different matches, average when Holly was in and great when Kid was in. A lot of people bought the finish as a shoot, but in actuality Kid worked the next night. As a shoot, but in actuality Kid worked the next night. As a shoot, but in actuality Kid worked the next night. As a shoot, but in actuality Kid worked the next night. As a shoot, but in actuality Kid worked the next night. As a shoot, but in actuality Kid worked the next night. As a shoot, but in actuality Kid worked the next night. As a shoot, but in actuality Kid worked the next night. As a shoot, but in actuality Kid worked the next night. As a shoot, but in actuality Kid worked the next night. As a shoot, but in actuality